and then spell it out yourself. You may be able to, with a pencil and paper, you need to be able to form these letters yourself. You need to be able to recreate them. You need to be able to put them together in the correct order. And you need to know where the spacing is between the letters and where one word stops and another word starts. Okay? It's a lot of stuff going on there. And it's really, really intensively focused on this major task. It's arguably more intensive than things like mathematics or science. It's really the cornerstone of what is going to be the educational process, which is reading and writing. No other function takes greater priority or has taken greater priority, except for maybe oral expression lectures, and reading and writing in the educational process. The keys to the kingdom are held in your ability to fluently and effectively decode what's in front of you symbolically, and download that information and then use it for applications or understanding. Now imagine the child that is in that class and they find that they're really, really trying, but they continue to have difficulties with matching letters and the sounds. And even more so, they continue to have difficulties with putting the sounds together to form the words. And when other kids are being asked to read out loud, they see that it seems almost, for some, kind of like a second nature. It's almost like walking or, talking or breathing even. They just seem to do it effortlessly. But for you, it's like learning to juggle or something more complex like that. What begins to dawn on you is that you actually are not performing at the same level as these other children. And the children are going home and they may be telling their parents, and the parents may celebrate it. And I know how to spell train, and I know how to spell house, and whatever it is. You may witness some of this as a child and see your friends do this. And you find that there's no desire for you to do that because it would only expose what you are having the most difficulty with. And so you develop this kind of sinking feeling that weighs you down, and you begin to feel smaller, and you want to even hide in the classroom, if not physically, psychically. This is the experience of what it's like to grow up with dyslexia, which affects about 20% of the population. If you look at something like dyslexia, it's often associated with a host of other difficulties. ADHD is one of the ones that's most prominently cited. 30 to 40% of individuals with dyslexia also have an associated self-regulatory disorder like ADHD. More so, these children often develop issues with anxiety and depression. Some of them are direct results of just their demoralization and the feelings that they have related to their experiences. Some of them may be polygenetic in origin. Maybe there are some things that genetically are responsible for dyslexia that are also riding shotgun with things that are responsible for mood disorders. So nearly 35 to 40% of individuals with dyslexia end up dropping out of high school. About half of individuals who have significant substance abuse problems and addiction issues have a learning disability like dyslexia. It's been estimated that those that are incarcerated, about 60 to 70% of the population has a learning disability like dyslexia. Okay. Now, I'm not going to end there. There's brighter news. It's also been noted that about 40% of those who are millionaires, who are millionaires in the United States, also have dyslexia. The preponderance of individuals that have been responsible for entrepreneurial endeavors, successful entrepreneurial endeavors, are dyslexic. Individuals with dyslexia are so overrepresented in fields like engineering, the performing arts, and architecture. MIT is also known as the place where dyslexia has found a home. Many people at MIT also have a learning disability like dyslexia. I actually heard a fact just the other day that about half of the individuals that work at NASA have something like dyslexia that they've contended with. Now, this isn't to make an argument that you should not, learning to read is not important, but what it does do is it emphasizes a huge disparity that exists in the outcomes of these individuals. Think about that. It's either Yale or jail, right? You've heard that. And what the heck is going on here? So I'm going to switch back over here. So what are we teaching these kids? Well, here's something that I would emphasize. One, all children are not created equal. Two, all children should not be treated equally. You cannot do anything you set your mind to. Now, I know in this day and age that those words may not ring or sit too well, but let's talk about that. When we talk about equality, I'd rather talk about equity. What would it be like? How reasonable would it be if John and Jane have glasses that they need for reading in class, and therefore everybody in the class is now passed out a pair of glasses and told to use them? Does that make any sense? So what we need to do is we need to suit the expectations and the interventions and the supports to the child's particular strengths and needs. We can't do everything that we set our mind to. As hard as I try, if I go out for the Chicago Bears or the New England Patriots, I am not going to make the team. It doesn't matter how much I set my mind to this and how much training I go through. No matter what I do, I'm not going to become an astronaut. Okay, if I set my mind to it. There are reasonable limits that are placed on our horizon. This does not have anything to do with the value that the child has and the meaningfulness of what they offer to our society. And kids, all kids, I do believe, have something valuable to offer to the world and the people around them. And that is something to be celebrated. I'm going to sort of slide past this because we spent a lot of time on this. I don't know how much people are actually interested in this. In terms of dyslexia, the brain, we know it's a brain-based learning problem. It's something that has primarily issues that are rooted in the temporal lobe. That's on the side of it's on your temple. It's particularly towards the rear of the brain that has to do with putting together sound units of information. And then also towards the front, there's a decoding piece. When information is brought from the back, the visual centers, and relayed to the frontal centers, this actually helps to decode what those particular visual units are. And then it then relays it into sound units and then puts it together into language. This is the language center of the brain. It's a brain area that we know works about 5 times harder in individuals with dyslexia when they're trying to read and learn a task that has a reading-based component to it, and even some language-based tasks. So think about that. Works 5 times harder, burns 5 times as much energy, okay?
Brian, excuse me, this is Kelly. We are not seeing your screen if you are trying to share it.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Did it go out, or?
I don't think it ever, it hasn't been on.
Oh,
for
it never shared in the first place?
We saw it at the very beginning, and then when
Okay.
it didn't come back on.
How are we now?
There
There
we
you
go.
go.
Okay. I'm sorry, guys. What's going on around there? And you probably wonder, what the heck is he talking about? This is the brain, obviously, and this is the area that I was talking about here, the temporal lobe. Okay. And the main takeaway is that it's a brain-based issue, and there's a lot of science behind it to help us understand how that is. Genetic factors are very clear in terms of where these learning disabilities come from. So, hey, probably in the audience tonight, we've probably got a number of people that have dyslexia or associated learning problems. You guys know exactly what these kids are going through. You probably can identify with it and empathize a great deal. The problems here that I've sort of alluded to are related to language processing, speech perception, okay, analyzing sounds, words, printed words, deficit in phonological awareness, okay? A lot of the treatment of learning disabilities, which are great, focus on reading and writing and have a multisensory instruction piece that has to do with listening, speaking, and writing skills, okay? And phonics instruction. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of that stuff because, reading is part of the intervention, but in terms of overall learning, there are lots of other things that can be done to boost that. So just went through this. All children not created equal should not be treated equally in the sense that they all have the same needs. Fundamentally, they all need to be loved and cared for and kept safe. But in terms of reading, different needs. And you can't really do anything you set your mind to. You do a lot of things, and a lot of things that you maybe didn't think you could do, but not anything. Okay. I'm going to jump forward here because I want to make sure that we can take a little bit of a pause in a minute for any questions. We want to start to recognize what are the abilities that these kids have, because one of the things that really starts to be emphasized very early on in school is the ability to read and write. It's not a bad thing. I mean, reading and writing is it's a wonderful thing. But when that individual does not demonstrate a proclivity or an ability to do that and do it well, what do they do well? Where do their talents lie? And that's where we want to start to look elsewhere, because it's very, very likely that they've got some very robust abilities that lie elsewhere. We don't want to be distracted by this difficulty with learning to read and write. A lot of times we use reading and writing ability or even verbal expression as a proxy for intelligence. We use it as something that, oh, I know that guy's smart because, man, he can read. I know that person's smart and they read like a book in a week. They read a book a day. That person's brilliant, okay? So we do that interchangeably all the time. But what about the individual that can't really read, okay? Or has difficulty writing? You've seen people who have these difficulties, especially with email. You can tell people that are not that great at writing, okay? But we tend to judge individuals very harshly based on those abilities. So we need to look for other strengths. This is we used to have a saying in psychiatry when I was at the hospital. Welcome to psychiatry, where anything you say can and will be used against you. It's true, I mean, psychiatry and psychology, there's, I'm the first to promote the wonderful things that it's offer the world, but I do think that we can label people very quickly. And we have to be careful about the additional labels that we start to give people, okay? So with that in mind, I want to keep in mind that, individuals can display issues. It's sort of like, when you're in the waiting room at the doctor and you read through the symptom checklist, and suddenly you're starting to think, man, I got this issue, I got that issue, depending on the pamphlet that you're reading at the time. So we're going to go through things here And you may think, oh, maybe my kid's got this, or maybe my kid's got that, or maybe I have that. Not necessarily. Okay, there's very clear criteria that we want to apply to these things. Okay, so that we can be very clear about what it is we're dealing with. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. These are some of the core symptoms that go along with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Very important to mention that most of the attention deficit hyperactivity disorder symptom profiles are of the inattentive type with individuals who have dyslexia. Now, that's not to say that kids that are hyperactive and impulsive don't display dyslexia. It's just that there's more of a preponderance of individuals with the inattentive type that also have dyslexia. This is really important to know for many reasons, but one that strikes me is that it's easily missed. Inattention is something that, kids get really good at playing off that they're paying attention when they're not paying attention. And so they may miss things because their mind is drifted. They're attending to something that they began to think about while they were reading, or something they began to think about while somebody was speaking, okay? Also, individuals that it's often confused. I'm going to muddy the waters here a little bit. Individuals with dyslexia can be confused to have ADHD. So it's really important to get an accurate diagnosis with a thorough evaluation by a trained professional. And individuals with dyslexia can be confused to have ADHD, particularly attentive type, because remember that 5 times the effort statistic that I threw out to you guys? Well, if you're working 5 times harder, think about how much more quickly you're going to get tired when you're reading. You're going to get, if you are running a race, you had to run a 5K, and you were in just as good a shape as everybody else in the race, and then I said, all right, let's put this 50-pound backpack on you, okay? Now you're going to run the race, and nobody else gets the backpack but you. Think about how much sooner in that race you're going to get tired. Think about how far you'd actually go in that race. So the individual with dyslexia can look very inattentive, but it's really fatigue. And it's really that they're maybe getting frustrated, and they're not really getting the information that they want to get, and so they start to drift. And that would be more of a case of dyslexia that can look like ADHD. So I know I'm muddying the waters a little bit there, but it's just more of an argument for a thorough evaluation to tell really what is going on. Okay. These are just some DSM criteria that have actually been revised over the last few years or so. This is something that needs to be present before the age of 12. It used to be before the age of 7. They revised that. And it must also, it's important to take a look at the extent to which it impairs functioning. I don't want to overwhelm you guys with stats, but this is, this is important to look at, just at a glance, looking at learning disabilities associated with ADHD, okay, versus no ADHD. And then, of course, the other issues like conduct disorder. Conduct disorder are those kids that are robbing, stealing, hitting, burning, doing all those things that get you into trouble and may get you behind bars. And then, of course, other issues as well, like oppositional defiant disorder. A lot of individuals can look very oppositional. And one of the things that's happening there is you've got individuals that may have a self-regulatory issue that goes along with their dyslexia, but they've also begun to view the world as a place that's not looking out for their best interest. They've begun to view the world as a place that they may not actually, they don't like the rules of the game, because the rules of the game seem to be pitted against them. So what they have started to decide to do is that they're going to create their own rules, okay? And they're going to try to flip the script, so to speak, and make other people dance to their there too, because of the shame and the anxiety that they experience, and the difficulties that they've experienced from a very early age. Intermittent explosive disorder is also something that can be seen. These are individuals that get really, really upset. They lose their cool easily. And these are things that can relate to some of the wiring issues that take place that are also associated with dyslexia. Anxiety disorders are some of the things. There's a host of different anxiety disorders, but social anxiety disorder is a big one with individuals who have dyslexia, as well as generalized anxiety disorder and sometimes panic disorder. Panic disorder can be associated with real experiences of failure and embarrassment and shame, and really just kind of freezing up, kind of that blackout kind of anxiety that they experience that's related to some really significant experiences with failure. Social anxiety disorder is a real common one. That's social anxiety disorder has a huge embarrassment and shame component to it. Fear of being rejected, ridiculed, embarrassed in social situations. And this comes up a lot for individuals with dyslexia because, there's probably a number of tasks that they may have engaged in where they misread something or they couldn't perform at the same level. And so other people pointed it out or not only noticed it, but they commented on it, they disparaged it. Individuals with dyslexia also tend to have, they can have verbal expressive difficulties or hiccups where they mix up words so that when they're speaking, they, the words are, they can't find the words. You probably hear me doing that a little bit tonight as I'm talking. It's more because I'm excited to talk to you, but it's also that it's late in the day, and I'm trying to just get you as much information. But you can hear people do that, where they sort of mix up their words. They may stutter a bit. They may switch the front of the word with two words next to each other. So it's like that's an all torter instead of tall order. These are things that typically are phonological mix-ups because they sound similar, and so they get flipped around in the brain. And then they sound kind of goofy, and then people, especially if you're a teenager, they get ripped apart, And so they experience a lot of anxiety, and they experience a lot of insecurity about being able to, present themselves in a way that's well received. Okay, I'm gonna take a fiver here for questions because I want to try and keep my promise and throw it over. Kelly, do you have anything in terms of questions? What are we thinking?
Yeah. So we have a couple questions. The first one is, what are one or two things that can be done to help during our homeschooling?
Ah, yes. Wow. Guys, I just I'm always struck with this, with this question of my heart goes out to you in terms of just like how hard you guys are working and the burden that you guys carry. I don't want to say burden, but it's I don't know. I've been with my kids at home and it feels like a burden sometimes. So that's where that's coming from. But try as hard as you can to find a quiet, distraction-free area, but also try to complement as much as you can the learning experience with auditory and visual representations of the material. So YouTube videos that go through this material, people talking about this, outdoor experiences that experiment or look at the material. Getting up and moving is going to be definitely a really valuable part of the day, breaking up the day so that they can get that energy out. They can sit and settle for periods of time. Pay attention to the cues, when they're getting frustrated and they're getting upset, it means that there's probably something that's going on. It's a hiccup that's occurring for them, where just your presence, your physical presence, being in the room, talking with them in a reassuring way, listening to what they have to say in terms of complaints, just listening. I'm not saying getting advice. I'm not saying, trying to cast it in a positive way. That actually can make a huge difference. If you can take that layer of frustration off, you can take some of that layer of anxiety off by them being able to vent. It can make a big difference to clear the way for them to be able to learn. This is also a really important thing for me to say here, where it may not seem like this, and I think we can lose track of this, but I always come back to this with the families that I work with, and I also need to remind myself of this when my kids are being a pain in the neck with me. But it's a really simple rule, which is that all kids want to do well. They all want to do well. There's not one child that has ever been birthed that wakes up in the morning and wonders how they can fail and how they can not achieve. Every single child, it's in our nature, it's in our DNA, wakes up in the morning and from an early age wants to go out into the world, and they want to do things, and they want to make their parents proud. All children want to do well. When they are upset, when they are avoiding, when they're not doing things, it's because the pathway to doing well seems to be blocked for them. To them, it feels completely cut off. Okay? And so, I just offer that as something that, for as parents, I know sometimes it's hard for us to keep that in mind. It feels like you're just giving us a hard time or attitude or whatever. And we need to remind ourselves that they want to do well. They're just really struggling.
And Dr. Rosino, kind of tied in with that is a question about self-esteem. So this parent is looking for some practical ways to help their son's self-esteem and to not make the dyslexia kind of weigh him down. And then any kinds of therapy that would be best for kids that have maybe oppositional defiant disorder or some of these other disorders that you mentioned.
Sure. So there's a lot packed into those questions.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things that I'll take a couple of threads. Okay. So in terms of the self-esteem issue, that's the question of the day, right? Really keeping an eye out for something that they enjoy doing, that they really enjoy doing, and something that they enjoy doing for the sake of doing. Okay. Now I can already imagine some of the responses that some of you might be having. Well, he really enjoys dumping the trash can all over the kitchen. So, but what I mean is something that they enjoy doing, and they feel like they're doing well at this thing. It's being well received. Okay, that's huge. Like we put, especially in Northern Virginia, we put a huge premium on accomplishment and being good at those things that are sort of recognized as valuable. That may get us into Thomas Jefferson or get us a job or whatever. But there is a huge premium to be placed on doing things that you really enjoy doing, activities that you really enjoy engaging in. There can be huge value in that. And that actually may also be one of the signs of a hidden ability. There might be a hidden ability, there might be a hidden skill or talent there that goes into that is related to the fact that they enjoy doing it so much. Typically, people that have a talent in an area also really enjoy doing it. So it's a good marker for that. As far as the oppositional defiant disorder goes, so one of the best therapies is a cognitive behavioral therapy. It works with the parent-child interaction. I mean, it's very clear there. One of the things that is most difficult when you're dealing with an oppositional child is the extent to which it's affected your relationship with the child. You're having you're having thoughts and feelings that are really uncomfortable and unpleasant towards your own child at some point. And that's distressing, takes a toll on your confidence as a parent, your feelings of guilt and shame. But it also makes it really, really difficult to not be always saying no, or not always be saying something that's kind of critical, right? So one of the first things that I work with people on, and I know that people that are good at what they do work on, is finding ways to give what we call sloppy reinforcement, or sloppy praise. That is, saying things that are positive or praising the kiddo, and trying to find that as much as possible. What's really key here, and cannot be underemphasized, is that you really have to be sincere about it. It has to be something that you really do believe is positive. And so it may take some talking through and really thinking about, and reevaluating your expectations around, what this child is doing, and whether it's positive or not. But I can't tell you the number of times where I've talked to parents who are at a later stage of dealing with this, and you ask them to tell me a couple of positive. It's a standard psychologist thing. Tell me a couple of positive things about your child, and they're kind of stumped. And as a parent, that doesn't feel good, and so it's really helpful for them to go through the exercise to remind themselves, this is a kiddo that, their attention's been so drawn to these negative things, to really broaden the scope for them, so that they can see, oh yeah, he does do these things. He actually did pick that up. He didn't just throw it on the ground like he did before. So really paying attention to that stuff. Okay. Good enough for now?
I think we're good for now, Brian.
Okay. Let me move along here, because I think understanding the experience is the next leg. I really want to give you a taste of this, because I know that we're up against the clock. So here are some of the examples that I was talking about. You look at this. The similarity between B, D, P, and Q. They look basically the same. You rotate them 45 degrees. You rotate them 90 degrees, 180 degrees, and it's the same. It's the same thing, right? But they really do. They mean drastically different things, as you can see by the written word over to the right. Kelly, I want to ask you to engage in a little bit of an exercise, okay? So I'm going to show a picture.
Gotcha.
And this is going to give you a little bit of an experience of what it's like to be someone who has a learning problem or dyslexia in the class, okay? So I'm going to show a picture. Okay, that's your picture. Let me get it up as a slide. Sorry about that. So the question I'm going to throw to the audience is, what is this? Now, imagine you're in a class and you've been called on, okay? And everybody's looking at you, and the teacher says, what is this? Come on, what is it? I don't have all day. Oh, don't give me attitude. What is it? This is a simple picture. Okay. Now, Kelly, I would like for people to write in answers of what they think this is a picture of.
Okay, folks, put it in the chat. I'm going to put my answer.
And this is the first time I've done this exercise by telecommunication, so I don't know how it's going to go. But usually I have people raise their hands, which is a little bit closer to the mark of being in class. Okay, what do we got, Kelly?
Well, the first one I really like is no freaking idea. A cat, a face, a polar ice cap, dog and turtle, satellite shot. Oh, Mount Rushmore, a desert.
Okay, all right. Everybody's staying in for recess. Everybody. You guys have given me a hard time, and I'm sick of it. Okay, just kidding. All right, but that may be the response, right? That might be the response of a teacher, particularly if they feel like the kiddo's got a little bit of extra anger or something like that. clowns around, disrupts in order to draw the focus off of them and what they're not able to do. I'm going to tell you what this is. This is an old, grainy picture of a cow. A cow's head. There's the ear. There's the eye. There's the snout, the nostrils, the other eye, the other ear, and the top of the head. Now, this is usually where I'd say, can you guys all see that? And a lot of people will see it, and then some people will say, no, I don't see it. And then they'll have to I'll have to show them again. So the ear, the eye, this is the head, the snout, and the nostrils, and then the eye and the ear. It's a really grainy, old picture of a cow. Okay? For those of you that can see that, when you see this picture again, and somebody asks you, what is this? Or you're going to be able to jump right up and say, that's a cow. And everybody's going to be blown away by your ability to see that. But you recognize it right away because you've been taught what to look for. You've been taught how to process this information. And that's what we're doing with kids who have a learning problem. They're in a world where they're receiving information that does not make sense to them. And when you can walk them through it and explain it to them, it changes everything. Okay? All right. I'm not going to ask you what this is because I don't think we have enough time, but this is just another example, okay, of how perception and being able to accurately perceive the information, also how previous learning plays a role on perceiving the information really makes a difference. This is a woman looking in the mirror, okay, and that's a reflection. But it's also a picture of a skull, okay? Those are the teeth, that's the nose, these are the eyes. This is an old picture. I think it's a lesson about vanity, something like that. And usually what I do is, emphasize here that kids with dyslexia, they may perceive things in a different way, but it's not necessarily wrong, okay? So the conventional answer might be it's a woman looking in the mirror, but when the dyslexic child sees it, they see a skull. And if you actually shift your own perception, your own bias, yeah, it makes perfect sense why they saw it that way. And so kids with dyslexia actually have a really amazing ability to do this with new information, to take information and shift it and reorganize it in new and innovative ways. I want to say. Okay. Okay. I'm going to read this silently while it's being read aloud. Okay. All right. You guys are going to read it silently. I'm going to read it aloud. Okay. This is of how the level of complexity that goes into reading. Okay. So let me just read it, and then we'll go to the next thing. Last Tyranny, Flingeldorp and Pribben were in the nerd-linked, truckering, gloopy cables and gleaming, burly greps. Suddenly a giddy strazzle boofed into Flingeldorp's tresk. Pribben gaped. Oh, Flingeldorp, he chifed. That giddy strazzle is tuning in your grep. Now, if we had lookbacks, and if you really listen to this, you could probably, lookbacks are just going back to this and looking back at it. You could answer these questions. When did this take place? Last Tyranny. Who was with Flingeldorf? Pribben. Where were they? Nerdlink. Right? So you can answer these questions. Does it mean you know what the heck it's about? No. But, you could answer the question and you could do very well. And that's what kids with dyslexia get really good at. There's a lot of kids with dyslexia, they can answer the questions. They're really good at putting down the correct answer. They just don't know what the heck it means. They don't know what the heck it has to do with learning or problem solving with something. Take a look at this list. Now, look at this list. Do you know all the words on this list? I mean, maybe some of them you don't, but for the most part, you probably find that you know about, 80 or 90%. Isolated, no, are, between. I'm just jumping around. With, one, draws, points. So you know these words, right? And you could probably read these words, right? I mean, let's say, that's not a problem for you. Maybe you can't, but let's assume that it's not. Great. No problem, right? You don't have a reading problem. Let's put these words together into a paragraph. If the known relation between the variables consists of a table of corresponding variables, the graph consists only of the corresponding set of isolated points. If the variables are known to vary continuously, one often draws a curve to show the variation. Everybody got that? Okay, because there's going to be an assignment tonight that you're going to need to work on that draws on this lesson. Okay, now look at that. These are the words. That's the paragraph. When we assemble the words together, depending on how the words are assembled, it dramatically changes what it means. The child's ability to know these corresponding words has got nothing to do with whether they're going to understand this paragraph. That's what children with dyslexia struggle with. And that is something that's missed time and time again. Where people are saying, what's the problem? I don't get it. What is your problem? You're just not working hard enough. Are you sure you're paying attention? You need to sit down and buckle down, mister, and you need to do your work. Sometimes they have trouble with reading words on the page. Okay? Come on, said Betsy. We have to pick up this corn. Right? Usually I read through the whole thing because I get another sheet that I could read through, but I want to. But if you're having trouble with fluently decoding words, your eyes can grow tired. You can, the accuracy of one eye may be better or worse than the other. You start to develop issues with seeing the written word on the page. Imagine what that does to the fluency of your reading. Imagine how fast you can actually read something. Come on, said Betsy, we have to pick up this corn. I'm checking the time here. Oh, we only have a few minutes. Guys, here's the point. With the neurotypical child, the ability level outstrips the level of effort needed to accomplish the very same tasks that an LD child, or a child with LD, I should say more appropriately, can accomplish. The amount of effort is so much greater than the ability to perform particular tasks. And so all children want to do well, motivated. What are they motivated to do exactly? And children typically develop problems with behavior, rebellion, that sort of thing. They're typically avoiding and motivated to avoid humiliation, failure, rejection, and so forth. Okay? So, where does this leave us? If we can cue in on their strengths, if we can cue on helping them do well, if we can cue on their ability to engage in mathematics and problem solve in a novel way, if we can engage their learning through different modalities, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, meaning like movement or activities. We've got a kiddo that's probably a voracious learner and would gladly engage in those opportunities to learn and would probably achieve at stunning levels. And so we need to recognize what exactly the child needs and pair that with the approach while also recognizing what their particular strengths are. Okay. I want to turn it over to questions and thoughts. I like this joke on the side. And Kelly, do we have time for just maybe a question or two?
Sure. Brian, I don't see any in the chat right now, but if anyone has something, feel free.
It's because I did such an amazing job.
That's right. Oh, Brian, we've got a question from a couple people about access to your PowerPoint.
Oh, yeah.
If you could send that to me, then I could post it on our dyslexia website, everybody.
I'd be more than happy to do that, guys. Yeah, because there's lots of information in there. Some of it I didn't cover. And my website's in there too. If you wanted to ask me questions or correspond with me, I'll do my best to get back to you in a timely way. But I'm happy to entertain those.
Let's see. There are a couple of questions about specific methodologies and the difficulty of the schools helping these kids. I will say that within this conference over the next month, there are tons of these little presentations on the type of programs and methodologies that we are using in the school system. And Brian, I don't know if you have any feelings towards, like, for example, the Lucy Calkins. That was one program that was mentioned in one of the questions.
Yeah, so there's a couple like the Wilson program or the Orton-Gillingham approach. Those are approaches that the Orton-Gillingham in particular has a pretty good research base to it. If they're paying close attention to the orthographic piece as well as the phonological piece and the ways in which the orthographic piece is recognizing shapes and the sequence of shapes and the ways in which those things correspond to sounds and meaning. Those should be a heavy component of what's being worked on and continues to be reinforced.
Okay. And Brian, about what age does dyslexia typically show up?
Yeah, that's another great question. Typically, you can see difficulties with dyslexia appear around 5 or 6, but you have to have a really a pretty trained eye to notice these things. But I would even be reluctant to diagnose it at that age. I think to make a good diagnosis, you're probably going to be looking at 7, 8 years of age, and depending on the level of impairment, you may be able to find it sooner. Kids that are really, really struggling and having difficulty, you're going to identify earlier. Versus those that have more subtle signs, they're gonna come across later. And they may do some of the things like being able to read. They can learn to read, but when it comes to the shift of reading to learn, that's where they really start to struggle. Okay. I do have a saying, that I use a lot. I use this saying a lot because I use it for different things. But if you've met one dyslexic, which means basically there's a lot of variability. There's a lot of difference. Okay. But I think usually for the rule of thumb is between 7 and 8 age, between the ages of 7 and 8, first and second grade. Second grade, more securely, you can identify it.
And this last one, I think, speaks to what is the best way to diagnose dyslexia?
So the best way to diagnose it is there are a few things that you need to really pay attention to. One is the phonological piece. So their ability to decode letters and pronounce the sounds that go with the letters, and then also put the letters and sound units together to form words. Okay. So any evaluation worth its salt will look at the phonological processing piece of reading, and then also looking at that orthographic piece. So how readily they process visual information, and they can recognize differences between pieces of visual information, but particularly visual information, that orthographic piece that's related to written words. Okay.
Okay. And Dr. Rosino, we've had a couple requests for your contact information again. Maybe that first page, your first slide.
Yeah, sure. And that'll also. Do you want me to put the slide up there?
That might be helpful.
All right. Instead of looking at my ugly mug. All right. There we go. Okay, that's my contact information.
Brian, hate to tell you, we're not seeing the slide.
Oh, okay. Let's see here. Can you see it now?
Not yet.
All right. Let me try this again. Who's the smart guy now, huh? All right. Okay, here we go. Is that okay?
Yeah, there you go. Dr. Rosino, I have a question. Are you able to work with kids and families right now in this virtual world?
I am. I am definitely working with kids and families right now. I'm booked, pretty heavily booked, but I'm definitely still working with kids and families virtually and trying to accommodate them the best I can. So, some patience with me in terms of where the openings are, but I'd be happy to, talk with people about that too.
Okay. All right, everyone. Well, we want to recognize and respect everyone's time tonight. We're a little bit over. I want to thank Dr. Rosino, and I also want to thank all our parents. Again, take a look at our dyslexia webpage. A lot of the questions that are coming up in the chat might be addressed in some of our other presentations over the course of the month. And again, you can always reach out to us at the Parent Resource Center, and we can try and get you some of the recommendations that you're asking for, and also some answers to some of your questions as well.
All right, wonderful. Well, it's been a pleasure, guys, and maybe I'll get to meet some of you and be able to put a face with some of the questions out there, and hang in there, please, with all that's going on, and take care of yourselves.
Agreed. Thanks again, everybody, and thank you again, Dr. Rosino. It was awesome.
Oh, you bet. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye, everyone.